Bandits are brutally assaulting a woman, showing no sign of stopping. It seems certain she'll be tortured to death. When gunfire suddenly rings out, dropping every attacker instantly. A gang wearing red scarves emerges nearby, but they prove no better, immediately binding the woman to a cross to burn her alive instead. In this lawless frontier, beauty itself is a curse. Yet even here, someone occasionally steps up despite the danger. The bandits, spotting a man dragging a coffin behind him, mistake him for a simple undertaker, mocking him and telling him to move along before he gets hurt too. But the man shows no fear whatsoever. After dispatching the group entirely, Jack turns to look at the still shaken woman. Undeniably striking. Normally, he'd walk away alone after a rescue like this, never forming attachments to anyone. But this time, inexplicably, he breaks his own rule, even taking the initiative to speak with her.
Il mio nome è Django. Finché starai con me, nessuno ti farà del male.
Having survived 2 separate waves of violent men, Maria has grown deeply wary of any man's intentions and firmly rejects Jack's offer of help. Uncharacteristically patient for someone normally so cold and taciturn, he asks again whether she'd like to travel together to the nearest town. Gripped by fear, she still hesitates. Just as the standoff continues, one barely alive bandit attempts a sneak attack, but Jack reacts instantly, ending the man's life without hesitation. Witnessing his skill firsthand, Maria finally nods and agrees to accompany him. The moment they arrive in town, however, a mysterious figure watching from the shadows takes notice. Jack brings Maria to a hotel, where the owner and the working girls, spotting the coffin, grow visibly uneasy. The owner flatly refuses to give them a room. Jack responds with firm authority, walking up to the girls and demanding their room keys directly. Intimidated by his presence, they hand them over without protest. He then offers valuable items in exchange, catching them completely off guard with his unexpected generosity. He gives the key to Maria, who still can't quite figure out what this coffin-dragging stranger actually wants. With no other options, she settles temporarily into the room. Ironically, the very town she'd once desperately fled. The owner warns Jack that Maria can only stay one night. She must leave by dawn. A clear sign that some larger power in town has long coveted her. Jack shows no fear at this news, quietly resolving to find and confront whoever's been abusing their power over the townspeople. Alone in her room, Maria feels crushed under the weight of her recent ordeals, unaware that the coffin-dragging stranger downstairs will eventually become the only person she can truly rely on. Downstairs, Jack eats and chats casually with the owner, learning the source of the town's decay. An ongoing conflict between Mexican rebels and Major Jackson has left the town lifeless and desolate, with the working girls reduced to playthings for both warring factions. The hotel survives only because the town sits in neutral, buffer territory tacitly protected by both sides. One of the girls, impressed by his generosity earlier, approaches to flirt. But Jack, principled as ever, remains unmoved. Just as she curiously asks what's inside the coffin,
Uno che si chiama Django.
the mysterious man who'd been watching them earlier walks into the hotel, his eyes darting repeatedly between Jack and the coffin. The owner hastily hands over protection money, though the man complains it's too little, demanding he personally explain the shortfall to Major Jackson. This man turns out to be one of Jackson's enforcers, tasked with collecting protection fees. Though today, his real interest lies elsewhere. Any stranger arriving in town warrants investigation. Jack ignores him entirely, even provoking him outright, but the man swallows his anger rather than retaliating immediately. Upstairs, Maria changes into a dark green outfit, deliberately, since it's the one color Major Jackson despises most. Just thinking about the notorious Major's imminent arrival fills her with dread. Everyone in town despises Jackson. Outwardly harmless, he's actually a thoroughly monstrous predator beneath the surface, who delights in hunting innocent civilians for sport, seizing gold mines, and plundering townspeople's property. A man capable of any atrocity imaginable. Upon hearing a stranger has arrived in town, Jackson immediately abandons whatever hunt he's currently enjoying and rushes straight to the hotel. The girls greet him warmly as usual, and the owner offers protection money as always, apologizing for the recent slow business and begging for more time. But Jackson couldn't care less about the money. His full attention is fixed on Jack. He orders his men to lock the doors. Even surrounded by numerous armed men, Jack remains completely composed, showing no trace of panic. One of Jackson's men, emboldened by the Major's presence, attempts to force himself on one of the girls in front of everyone. When she refuses, he strikes her hard across the face.
Se non vuoi andare con lui, vieni con me. Ti ha detto che non ha voglia.
Jack can't stand by and watch, stepping in to stop the scarred bandit. The man reaches for his gun to teach Jack a lesson, but Jackson intervenes, sending all the girls upstairs before turning to accuse Jack directly of killing 5 of his men by the river and traveling alongside a white woman, which he considers an unforgivable betrayal of racial loyalty. As he speaks, he loads his weapon. But before anyone realizes what's happening, every man in the room is on the ground, defeated in an instant. Jack shows mercy, sparing Jackson's life. Too intimidated to make any sudden moves, Jackson agrees to Jack's demand, gather all his remaining men and return to town for a one-on-one duel, while Jack waits here. Once Jackson flees to rally his forces, Jack heads straight upstairs to Maria's room. Seeing him again, Maria can barely conceal her admiration, her earlier wariness dissolving after witnessing him single-handedly dispatch an entire gang. She recognizes he's unlike any man she's known, willing to genuinely express gratitude. Jack, normally indifferent to women, doesn't leave this time. He quietly closes the door and slowly removes his hat. The next day, Jack drags his coffin out of the hotel, waiting for Jackson's forces to arrive. Facing overwhelming odds alone, his expression remains unchanged, as if he's already certain of victory. The hotel owner, meanwhile, is deeply anxious, unable to understand why Jack let Jackson go free. Once his men return in force, everyone in the hotel faces certain death. He repeatedly urges Jack to flee with Maria immediately, but Jack pays him no mind, leaving the owner to assume he's simply a reckless young man with no regard for his own life. Before long, Jackson arrives with a massive force, all wearing conspicuous red masks, having even prepared a burning cross in advance, expecting to collect Jack's corpse. Jack quickly takes cover behind a wooden post, assessing the situation. He carries 2 revolvers, 12 rounds total, nowhere near enough firepower against dozens of armed men. As the enemy closes in, everyone assumes Jack will have to make his last stand with nothing but his revolvers. Instead, he opens the coffin lid, not to hide inside, but to reveal a heavy machine gun concealed within. He catches the bandits completely off guard. Mowing down most of them within seconds, their bodies littering the muddy ground. Seeing the battle lost, Jackson attempts to flee on horseback, but Jack has no intention of letting him escape, drawing his revolver and precisely shooting the horse out from under him, sending Jackson crashing to the ground. With the fight won, Jack packs away the machine gun. The hotel owner stares in stunned disbelief at the carnage, while the girls look at Jack with pure admiration. Though Jackson's forces have been decimated, 2 rival powers still control the border region. As long as they remain, the local population will never know peace. Jack deliberately spared Jackson's life as part of a longer, more calculated plan. Afterward, Jack accompanies the owner to the outskirts cemetery, where the owner buries the bandits killed earlier. Jack lingers before a particular gravestone, unable to walk away. It belongs to the one true love of his life, whose brutal death is directly tied to Jackson. 5 years earlier, Jack had left home to join the Union Army, while Jackson fought for the Confederacy. Back at the hotel, one of Jackson's surviving men shows up looking for trouble, deliberately blaming all the recent violence on Maria, claiming her presence has brought nothing but death and driven away business. The confrontation escalates into infighting among the girls themselves, who end up wrestling in the mud, pulling hair, though Maria remains unharmed throughout. The instigator watches, bewildered by the chaos he's caused, until a Mexican rebel unit arrives in town, forcing the girls to scramble back inside to clean up and prepare for business. The troublemaker fails to escape in time and finds himself surrounded by the rebels, becoming their entertainment for the moment. Dragged before rebel leader Hugo, he's repeatedly pressed for Jackson's hideout location but refuses to talk. Losing patience, Hugo cuts off his ear in front of everyone. Even through unbearable pain, the man refuses to speak. Amid the rebels' mocking laughter, Hugo finally shoots him dead. Meanwhile, Jack, having finished his business at the cemetery, runs straight into a Mexican rebel patrol on his way back. Without any pleasantries, he directly asks whether they answer to Hugo, and gets punched hard by a curly-haired rebel for his trouble. Back at the hotel, Hugo spots Maria trying to flee. She'd originally escaped his forced captivity once before, and now, falling back into his clutches, she's met with another beating. Just as Hugo prepares to continue assaulting her, his men return, dragging Jack along with them. Hugo's face lights up with delight upon seeing him. It turns out Jack once saved both Hugo's life and his wife's, and Hugo considers them close friends. In the next instant, Jack yanks the rifle from the curly-haired man's grip and slams it into him, venting his frustration from the earlier ambush. The man wants revenge but is stopped by Hugo, forced to swallow his humiliation. Hugo raises a toast, cursing Jackson's every crime and wishing him dead as soon as possible. The hotel owner tells Hugo that Jack has already single-handedly wiped out most of Jackson's forces. Skeptical, Hugo presses Jack for details on how he managed such a feat alone, while venting his own frustrations. His forces have long been under siege from the Mexican government army, forcing them into a perpetual retreat, while also constantly pressured by Jackson, leaving them barely surviving along the contested border. After hearing Hugo's troubles, Jack proposes a win-win plan that could earn Hugo massive wealth while stockpiling enough weapons to fight off the government forces. He then reveals the weapon hidden inside his coffin. Hugo's rough-and-tumble men have never seen anything like a machine gun before, utterly unaware of its terrifying power. Jack explains it carries the destructive force of 200 rifles firing simultaneously, then demonstrates it briefly. Hugo grows thrilled at the prospect of acquiring more of these weapons in bulk. Jack reveals that a large cache of identical weapons sits along the base river. Enough money would let them buy dozens and ship them back to Mexico, after which no armed force could hope to challenge them. But there's a major obstacle: they lack sufficient funds for the purchase. Seeing Hugo already hooked, Jack lays out his real plan. Jackson's border fortress holds years' worth of plundered gold ore. Together, they could stage a joint raid, eliminating a shared enemy while claiming both the gold and a substantial weapons cache in one stroke. Hugo knows the fortress is heavily guarded, and his limited manpower alone stands little chance in a direct assault, initially dismissing the idea as impractical. Until Jack lays out a flawless strategy. Following Jack's plan, the hotel owner transports the girls to Jackson's fortress under the pretense of bringing business, with the soldiers eagerly crowding around the wagons in excitement. While in reality, the Mexican rebels use the cover to infiltrate the fortress and make off with the gold. Before Jackson even realizes what's happening, the entire gold stockpile has been cleaned out. Once he discovers the theft, he leads a massive pursuit force chasing them relentlessly, only forced to stop at the international border. With the gold successfully secured, Hugo throws a celebration at camp, praising Jack's exceptional skill. But Jack understands full well that, being on Hugo's territory, actually collecting his rightful share of gold won't come easily. Still, he tells Hugo he intends to take his portion and leave on his own. Hugo, unwilling to let him go, tries to convince him to stay as a high-ranking officer within his forces, repeatedly assuring him the gold won't be secretly withheld, even personally storing it in the warehouse in front of Jack to prove his sincerity. During the celebration, the curly-haired man who'd clashed with Jack earlier makes advances on Maria. Seeing this, Hugo lashes him with a belt. Furious and humiliated, the man publicly challenges his leader. Why does the foreign American get special treatment while he's forbidden from touching Maria? The long-simmering tension between Jack and the man finally erupts into an open brawl. After several exchanges, Jack accidentally kills him in the struggle. Rather than blame Jack, Hugo actually feels relieved. Grateful Jack has eliminated a troublesome subordinate for him. As reward for this great service, Hugo generously offers Maria to Jack. Surprising everyone, Jack declines her, choosing a different woman instead. A rejection that leaves Maria deeply hurt. Back in his room, Jack tells the chosen woman simply to undress and not interfere with whatever he's doing, ensuring the guards downstairs relax their guard, their attention fully absorbed elsewhere. Meanwhile, Jack carries his coffin through winding paths to the warehouse storing the gold, loading the entire stockpile inside, clearly intending to take it all for himself. He then plants explosives throughout the warehouse. With a thunderous explosion, a massive hole blasts through the warehouse wall. Rebels in camp, hearing the blast, rush over to investigate. Amid the chaos and distraction, Jack slips the gold-laden coffin out through the breach. Rebels who venture inside the warehouse trigger traps and fall one after another. Jack quickly loads the coffin onto a wagon and prepares to make his escape, when suddenly a gun presses into his back. Turning around, he finds it's Maria. Together, the two flee the rebel camp. Upon discovering the theft, Hugo flies into a rage, ordering his men to hunt the pair down at all costs. Jack drives through the entire night, eventually reaching a bridge where he intends to part ways with Maria. But after everything they've been through together, Maria has genuinely fallen for him.
Io ti amo, Django.
Jack quickly confesses that his heart died long ago, unable to give himself fully to anyone. The memory of his lost love's brutal death haunts him constantly, and he refuses to drag Maria into further danger tied to his own troubled past. With that, he detaches the coffin from the wagon. But the startled horse bolts, and the coffin slides loose, tumbling into a patch of quicksand. Panicked, Jack dives in after it, only to become trapped himself. Maria reaches out to pull him free, and just as she's about to succeed, a hidden sniper fires from the shadows, striking her down instantly. Jack is dragged out of the mud by Hugo's arriving men. Learning the entire gold shipment has sunk irretrievably into the quicksand, Hugo completely falls apart. His dream of acquiring heavy weaponry shattered. Consumed with rage, he orders severe punishment for Jack, and Jack's hands are brutally maimed. Yet in the end, remembering old debts, Hugo can't bring himself to kill him outright, sparing his life. On the return journey, though, the group falls into an ambush set by Major Jackson, and the entire rebel unit is gunned down indiscriminately. Hugo fights back fiercely but ultimately can't escape Jackson's bullets either. Meanwhile, back in town, the hotel, shut down by Jackson as punishment for helping Jack raid his fortress, sits abandoned, with the owner planning to leave entirely and start over elsewhere. That's when Jack, covered in wounds and with both hands ruined, stumbles back carrying a badly weakened Maria. He desperately begs the owner to help treat her wounds. The owner agrees, but warns repeatedly that they must leave as soon as possible, since Jackson will surely track them here eventually. Maria, aware her injuries will only slow Jack down, keeps urging him to leave without her, unwilling to let him die for her sake. But Jack refuses to abandon her. He knows deep down that as long as Jackson lives, none of them will ever know peace. Yet with both hands crippled, unable even to hold a gun properly, killing Jackson seems nearly impossible. Maria worries endlessly, but Jack has already devised a plan. He instructs the owner to hide Maria somewhere safe, then has him deliberately leak word to Jackson that Jack is hiding alone at the outskirts cemetery, his hands completely ruined and utterly defenseless. Before long, Jackson arrives at the hotel with his men. Maria huddles in hiding, too terrified to make a sound, as the owner reveals Jack's supposed location, only to be shot dead on the spot by Jackson without hesitation. Maria narrowly avoids the same fate, remaining hidden. The group storms off toward the cemetery in fury. There, Jack stands beside the gravestone, struggling to hold his revolver with his ruined hands, steadying it against the headstone itself. When Jackson and his men arrive and see Jack in this pitiful, crippled state, they assume he poses no threat whatsoever, firing shots around him mockingly while hurling arrogant taunts. In that brief moment of distraction, Jack finds his opening and pulls the trigger. Finally ending the murderous reign of Jackson once and for all. The film ends here.